all this bing bonging. Okay, let's see if this works. I love this. Every week there's like, I suppose doing these lectures, I'm getting a different kind of, oh, okay, right. All this bing bonging. Right, sorry, I definitely went live on YouTube then. So meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. So I'll go in and edit that afterwards. Yeah, every time I come on these calls, it seems like I've got like new faces, which is really exciting. I like that. So yeah, I am going to, well, actually, I wonder if I can, no, I'm not going to share the live YouTube with anyone. But what I tend to do with these calls is, because this is a specific, it's a lecture, so the point of it is that I'm talking at you essentially to sort of like explore ideas. This week is going to be on the message, however, whatever that means. Maybe, I don't know, we'll explore that idea. It means that I can't necessarily interact with you as well as I would like to. I'm going to put my chair up as well, if it works. Not very well. And so I'm going to put you on mute, so that if other people join the room, you're not going to hear all the ping pong from people joining Zoom. I won't be answering questions until the end of the call. We can have like a bit of a discussion. So yeah, just going to stick you guys on mute and start introducing the call. So I can't hear you guys now. Hopefully, can you all hear me? Thumbs up. Okay, good. I always worry if I turn all the volume off on my computer, no one will be able to hear me. And it would just be an hour of me like, and no actual useful information coming out. So what we have covered so far in these series, just to sort of get everyone up to speed, is we've gone through the big picture of the Launchable philosophy and my script structure, and also the drawbacks of that, and the value, the problems, all the things, the big picture. So if you guys want to review that one, I actually don't know how to suggest. Just go look for it somewhere. It's in my YouTube. I'll share a link on in my Facebook, but I'm not the best person in terms of re-navigating you back. But if you search it, the big picture, in my Facebook group, in the ad lab, it should come up, and I will be sharing links later to this series, because it's all going to be put on YouTube. So we've done that. Just talked about the whole structure. We have also discussed the avatar. I was going to make these series much more specified on every single part of the structure, from the relatable section to the tangible section, all of that stuff. But I decided, because it was a very in-depth call in the first one, I felt like that was enough information, and maybe we could circle back around to go into more depth into the what I call compartments of the launchable script structure at a later date, if that's of value to people, if they're still struggling with the concepts. So if at any point, yeah, you guys want to maybe comment, or not in here, well, if you guys let me know somehow, I'm not going to make it easy for you two, you can fight to tell me whether more information on the compartments would be useful for you, and maybe I'll consider doing another lecture on that. But this week, I want to talk about the message, which I think is something that's spoken about most in advertising. And I do think it is incredibly important, but there's a reason why I kind of, I talk about the message or messaging a little bit further on. And that's because I think there's a danger with messaging, and it's what I've seen most in the community that I'm a part of, the online business community. It's kind of, in the world where I guess it's beginner marketers or beginner business, beginner entrepreneurship, or starting out entrepreneurs who are with a focus on marketing. I think marketers have learned the power of stories as a way to convey meaning, which is then useful to make sales or compel people towards action, because with the use of stories, we're able to create empathy and inspire emotion. And so it's not really the product or the features or anything useful, anything actually tangible to a certain extent that does the selling. It's the associations we make with the product that makes us sale, and also the positive feelings that we create based on the associations we feel towards those features. So I'm gonna untangle that for a second. Basically, the story is the thing that holds everything in, and marketers who have been marketing since, I don't know, like the age of print ads, have been playing around with messages more so than features and benefits. And I think when that gets translated, people take that so literally, and if we're not as well practiced in it, that we end up just saying stories. And a lot of the time they're not even hugely well constructed, because we're trying to sell something with a story. But anyway, so what I've seen is that by focusing all our attention on messaging, for the stage of business that we're in, which is the beginner stage of business, early marketing, those sort of things, it can be detrimental, and it creates a lot of fluff and fuzziness. And I've said this a few times, and I think we can all empathize with going like, why? What has this stuff that I've written got to do with what I'm selling? What relevance is it? I think we can all empathize with that if we're starting out with marketing, at least. So I put messaging a little bit further back, not because it's not significant. It's insanely significant, if not one of the most significant things, I think. Well, I suppose it's very, very significant. But the reason I prioritize it lower than the structure, well, there's a couple of reasons for that. The reason I prioritize it lower than the structure, maybe lower than the avatar, is because of how fluffy and easily misconstrued it is, that I feel that it's useful to have something that grounds us into the, I guess, the meat of it, right? So the structure is just, there's nothing super abstract about it. It's like these step-by-step things that you follow, and it's very tangible and you can see it. But I guess the structure is a case, right? It's not necessarily got any value to it except that it holds something. And so you can't really say that the script structure that I've created, or any structure, like this call has its own structure, anything we create has its own structure. With the structure, the value of the structure is defined by what it's structuring, which is the message. And I find basically in the community that I'm in, most people focus on the message. They don't focus enough on the structure, which is why I've deprioritized them. However, I can't avoid talking about the message for much longer, because otherwise we're just going to have a load of cold-hearted adverts going out and storytelling that's pretty methodical and not super connecting. So I'm going to address the message today in as best way as I can, despite the fact that it's abstract and obscure and kind of not real. It is real in the sense that we feel it, but it's not real in the sense that we can touch it. It's a sense. I think I like to think of the world in this way, that we're kind of confronted with matter and energy and like stuff and sensory things, like there's this real balance between what is and what seems to be, rather than just one or the other. And I think that's the same. Well, I think there's something like mystical and exciting about anything creative and that we create, but in terms of ads, in terms of stories, in terms of I guess copywriting, I don't want to just keep it to copywriting. I think we can all apply this to every sort of version of communication. It's the balance between the sense, what we're sensing, what we're feeling, and what we're feeling. And I think the best stories, devices, marketing materials are striking a balance between those two things. So it's a lot easier to talk about structure because it's undeniable. But when we start talking about the message, it's difficult to grab onto, and it's almost like it's contradictory in itself. I can say one thing and it's interpretive, so it can be interpreted in a different way. And I think that's the sort of danger with messaging as well. So I have to approach it in a very delicate way, because it is untethered and it can go off in so many different directions, which is why I've actually created the Launchable Ad Structure as well, the way that I've created it, with the pillars, so that it gives you that opportunity to have a free reign of creativity and abstraction within the confines of the pillars, so that it forces you to strike the balance between fluffy and sort of emotive versus well-paced and structured. So I think that's kind of what I'm trying to create here, is like a safe space to look at the chaos of creativity and messaging, whilst confined with the safety and security of the structure. I can already feel as I'm talking about this, like, God, it's so hard to get into this, because it's like herding cats. It's so hard. Like I can already feel myself getting really theoretical and very like floaty and fluffy. I can already feel myself getting carried away by the tide of crazy messaging. So I'm trying to keep it concise where possible, but that's essentially what it is anyway, isn't it? It's the illogical aspect that ties us together and is unbridled and very difficult to contain. So that's the message. But it's also, there's some benefits as well of having a message, and that is, I think it's the connection. It's what we connect to. And so, like I said, marketers have realized from the dawn of time that stories help us feel things, which then also inspires, however positive or negative you want to experience this, it also inspires us to buy. Okay, so I have an analogy I want to share with you today on the message. And what I'm hoping is that throughout this lecture, I can also deliver a message through the medium of this lecture and the structure that I put forwards, to sort of like reinforce my point, how of you can go off on tangents, but be like, come back to a solid point, and deliver the feeling of it, but still deliver value and tangible, useful information. That's what I'm trying to do. And I think the message that I'm trying to deliver, and this is something to really get into as well, the message that I'm trying to deliver throughout this particular lecture, I've got an overarching message, and this sort of like self-contained message within this lecture is that you need to, delve deeper than you think is necessary. That's what I think. I think we all have this real deep side of us, which is just fascinated by the weirdest coincidences of the world, and we're faced every day with just the insane implausibility of the world. And I think everyone experiences that to a certain extent as well. We're all just feeling our way through the world. And if you can somehow, through a process of mining, get into that curiosity and get that out in your message, in whatever it is that you're creating, whether you're creating an advert, whether you're creating a blog post, whether you're creating a novel, whether you're creating a film, it's like, go into those places that you think are really unique to you and specific to your human experience, that makes you maybe feel a bit vulnerable and a bit exposed, and bring them out to the surface. One of my friends, there's two experiences that I'm going to share with you before I actually get onto the point. This is what messaging does. It takes you off in crazy directions. So I've got notes, which is what everyone else should have, to make sure that I don't veer too far off. This is like the moral of the story, is don't get too swept away by the message, which is why I've got those pillars in place. But I want to share this story, and maybe everyone will resonate with it. And I hope I can share with you how I've got a few stories actually, but one of my memories at university was I came into my friend's room. I was living with a friend at university, and she had the room downstairs, which was probably the dining room, which had been converted into a bedroom, as well as the living room. So we had no actual shared living space. But I came into her room and she'd gone to work, and there was a piggy bank, an actual piggy bank. Like, no, it was still like antiquated then, on its side, on her bed, with the button out, and then this sort of like trail of coins. And it was one of those things where I got in there, and that one image, it made me laugh so much, because I could tell everything. I almost could make up my own narrative as to what was going on. I was like, it just made me laugh. It was such a potent image. And I remember I sent a picture of it to her, just this piggy bank on its side and this trail of coins. And I just said, tough times. And I mean, she was doing fine, but it was just like, that image meant so much to me. And I could almost imagine this story playing out, where she's like, I need bus fare. And she's like pouring all the money out of her pig and all this stuff. And I was like, it brought me joy to be able to make the connections between what this image meant and what it could have alluded to. And I remember that very, very vividly, because it just gave me so much, like, it made me feel very like connected. Like, I was like, I'm not really alone in this world. There are people that also do these things, and it travels across space and time. Anyway, what's important about this is I couldn't ever really identify why I found that so significant a memory. It just comes to me all the time. I just find it's really, really ingrained in me. And when I lived in Park Royal in London, in a high-rise, it was actually a luxury apartment, but it doesn't sound like that. I also lived with a friend, and I think I left, I don't know, like my coat lying around and my shoes or something like that. And I remember saying to her once, like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I can just get a bit messy sometimes. And she said, oh, no, it's fine. I like the signs of life. And I was like, oh, that hurt. Like, it struck me so much. I was like, that's what it is. And that's what I'm looking for in everything, is signs of life. And I think that's how if anyone has seen my content, or has anyone seen which is why I did the lecture series like this as well. If you see my adverts, what I aim to do, I teach people how to script, but I don't really script, because I think what I want to prioritize is the signs of life in me. Like, so I'm thinking things through, and I'm making jokes, and I'm sort of like, I'm talking to them as if they're real, and I'm responding to myself, and I'm responding to how I think they're perceiving me. And I think it makes me very warm to watch. And I think it reminds people that there's signs of life. And I think what it kind of boils down to is that there's this, there's almost this feeling sometimes that we're surrounded by robots. And it's quite isolating, and you're like, I've got this weird, deep, dark secret, and I behave this way, and everyone else is this uniform, perfect thing, and they don't really have those, I don't know, whatever it is. And I think, even though that's totally irrational and probably quite narcissistic in a way, I think we all can empathize with this idea that we're just alone, and everyone else is either, they're robotic, or they've got their shit together or something. And then when you see something in someone, this vulnerability, and not like self-pitying or like distress or anything like that, just this moment of like humanity, I think it makes us feel insanely peaceful. I think I feel peace when I see signs of life in other people. And so that's, I think, what I'm aiming to try and do with a message is create a sign of life. Yes, I've got this product I would like to sell to you, but I'm a real person. I'm real, and I have an experience of the world, and and I think people want to connect to that. So that was kind of what the point of that story was, is that I think the message is where the signs of life come from. And it's so insanely difficult to teach that. I don't think it's teachable. I think it's more of a case of shedding what's stopping you from creating that, really. Because I think that you have to access vulnerability and spontaneity to be able to deliver signs of life. That's what I think it is. So how do you teach that? I'm not really sure if I can teach it, if I'm honest. I just hope that I can show you ways of accessing your own life within you to then put out and give you the confidence to be that way. I have no idea how to do that. I think, so here's an example of something that I do in my adverts is, so for instance, the last advert, which is doing quite well for me, I'm promoting, as one of the things I do, online business education to help people build a business regardless of their experience, etc. And I'm promoting some, as a tangible element, I'm promoting free workshops which introduce you to everything that's possible. For anyone who's doing this as well, I particularly speak to a cold audience because the people I speak to don't know what is possible with an online business. So I'm promoting these workshops which educate you on what's possible with an online business. If, for instance, you would like to, I don't know, change your life. And so one of the things that I said in my advert, which even when I watch it back now, and even though it was me, it kind of makes me laugh a little bit. I wonder if I could find it actually. I say, you're not going to be alone in watching these workshops. And what I meant obviously was, what I wanted to say was thousands of people all around the world have watched these workshops. So, you're in good company. And what I said was, you're not going to be alone while watching these workshops. And I realized, I was like, well, that's a bit daunting. And then I said in the advert, I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. No one's going to sit there and watch it with you. You might be alone. I don't actually know anything about you. And I watched that back and I'm like, that was there for me, like this sort of, this sign of humanity where I'm sort of like reflecting on something I say. And it makes it a little quirk and a little like quip to sort of get to them. Anyway, I think this is where I've kind of gone with this sort of direction, is much more in the case of I think it's called idiosyncrasies, these like sort of personal parts of us which come out, whereas I want to actually address the whole message. But what it boils down to, let's get past the trying to show ourselves as human, and let's talk about the reality of the message. That's obviously the other stuff is how you deliver it. I did this analogy earlier of like the thing that came to my head, and this is something to I guess encourage, is that wherever your imagination just comes from is like, I think if you want to really get into the depth of the messages, you've got to really trust that, because wherever these imaginations come from, or ideas or whatever come from, they're deep. We don't know where they come from and we don't know what they mean specifically, but I think they have got a huge amount of value. And I think one of the things that's benefited me over the years, especially during the time where I've been in business and in marketing, is applying significance to the instant images that come to me and taking them seriously. And that's just something to sort of, again, to apply as well, is I think it's accepting your creativity and allowing it to be. But what image came to me when I was trying to think about how do I talk about the message was that I thought I saw gold mining. I saw a truck, not a truck, like a cart full of gold, right? And there's tracks. And so that's a really good image, because you've got these tracks, you've got this cart, you've got this gold, you've got the person it's delivering to. And I said, that's ideal, because I suppose as an abstraction, the tracks in this example, let's just say for me, I promote mostly video advertising on YouTube. YouTube is the track. Like, it's the track to the person, potentially targeting. And if I'm sticking along the lines of content and copy and all that, the track is it's the route or the direction to them. And I think that would be the best analogy I can give that is the targeting. Like, what words in the targeting get to the person who is the avatar. You want your truck of your cart of gold to go to your avatar, and the cart is the structure, is the script structure. It's the thing that holds the valuable thing. And I thought this was so insane that I came up with this image. And again, it's this idea of what the message I want to get to you right now, and I hope that you see that I keep circling back to it, is to get something very simple. Mine is depth. Find the depth, find the humanity, find the realness, and get that out. I think that's the most important thing in messaging. And this is what you've got to do. You've got to find the depth, and it's very, very simple. And it's like almost one word that you want to convey. And so I had this image of this cart, which was very structured. And well, actually, I'll go to that afterwards. is full of gold, and the gold is the message. And I thought that was such an amazing metaphor that I came up with, because what you want to do is, as a storyteller or selling something or anything, is you want to get your gold to the person. And there are all these things that need to get done before that can happen, which is why I've done this launchable process. It's the cart, it's the tracks, it's all the things, it's the avatar. But the gold is the message, and that's the really important thing. And it's also really abstract, isn't it? Why is gold always thought of as really valuable? Why? It is hunk of metal. Why do we think of it as so valuable? And I thought this applies really well as well, is that gold is found and it's rare, but it's very clear what it is. It's like, oh, you know gold when you see it. And so I think that's the same. It applies when we think of if the gold is our message. It's the same. To me, they're the same thing. You don't make a message, you find it, and you can go through quite a process to excavate it as well. It's not necessarily easy. I do think though, with practice, it does get easier. But I think a message needs to be found and then obviously confined within the cart. Because here's another thing that's also super interesting, is that does the value of the gold depend on the cart and the tracks and the person being there? Which is interesting. Of course it does. It doesn't feel like that because it's still gold. But what use is it if it doesn't get delivered? What use is it if it's not being used? If it's still in the ground? It's not that useful. It's not that relevant. So it does depend on all these other things. Maybe not for it to be gold, but to be valuable, it has to be utilized. So I think that's really important. It's a really important metaphor to go along with everything I've been talking about as well, is that we focus heavily on the gold and the messaging, but if we're not putting it in a cart and sticking it on tracks and delivering it to a person, then it hasn't got a huge amount of utility. And that's the same sort of thing that I'm trying to get across here. And the message is something I really struggle with to share, again, because it's like, again, I can maybe teach you how to find gold, but I can't teach you how to bring it out yourself, I suppose. Like, I give you some strategies, but it's a lot of luck. And so that was my sort of analogy in terms of the message and all the parts to it. And so I guess the next thing we're charged with is how do you find the gold? How do you find the thing that's most valuable to share with other people? And so that's what I'm going to address now. I'm always brought back to Disney all the time. I think because it's the most prolific storytelling vehicle on the planet. And so whenever you're talking about stories or you're talking about storytelling, or you can't not think of Disney. And I always think it's really interesting because where the ideas of message versus avatar versus product get convoluted is the message, because some people focus more heavily on labels when it is a much more fluid relationship. So for instance, one of the examples I've said before is, I don't need to be half fish and half human to resonate with not feeling like I belong, right? The Little Mermaid is a story of a half fish, half human princess who lives under the water with a best friend crab, who doesn't feel like she's in the right place. She wants to be on land. And the gold is the fact that she doesn't feel like she's in the right place. And it's, I think the message of the Little Mermaid, let's just say, is take risks, like go. I think if I was to boil it down, maybe even just to one word, the Little Mermaid, I'd boil it down to go. And I think that still resonates and makes sense. I think that's what you can take a message and you can say one word, or very, very small, and it's very, very boiled into this very nuanced, small amount ideas. But then what you have to do is then you can't just start telling a story about a half fish, half human princess who lives under the sea with a best friend crab who wants to explore, and only address that problem, because she has to do stuff. She has to actually do some tangible, real life things to improve her life or to improve her circumstances. And she has to utilize the tools available to her in order to progress. And I think that's where the idea of the tangible and the relatable sections come in terms of creating an advert. You've got this emotion to move, to change, to grow, to do something different. And I say it's in the Little Mermaid, it's to go. But if it's what has she got in her vicinity to enable her to do that? Well, she needs legs, in her opinion anyway. Some might say that's a bit of an exaggeration and not necessary. Maybe she could just go a counsellor or something. But in her perspective, she needs some legs. And, you know, she needs, I guess, she needs to speak, but, you know, the witch doesn't think that she needs to be able to speak and takes away her voice, which is actually, you know, her gift. She's a singer. And it's what made Eric fall in love with her. It's this real paradox. And so she gets legs, basically, so that she can walk on land. And that's kind of, and the story doesn't end there, but for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to pretend like it's those two compartments. It's that relatability and the tangibility for a second. She's a fish. She wants to stop living underwater. She needs legs. What does she do? She goes to the witch who can give her legs. And there we go. Story's done. We've got the problem and the solution, and she does that. And so that's and the actual solution in that scenario was that there is a half woman, half octopus that can give her legs. And this is a really elaborate example of why the details are and aren't important. I've talked about this a lot, and there's labels. If we were to then say the solution to improving your life is to change, that makes sense in this scenario here. There's this half fish woman. She needs to change. The solution is to like take action and do something that's relevant and unique to her. Now, if we start and we can use the story of the Little Mermaid to draw parallels to that. But if we start saying you're half fish, half human, and you don't want to live under the sea anymore, so you need to go see your witch friend who's going to give you legs, no one's really going to empathize with that exact thing. So I think that story of the Little Mermaid is an amazing example of how the labels don't actually matter. It's the underlying desires and pains that are told through the expression of characters. And the labels, the fact that Ariel has red hair is of zero relevance. Her demographics are of zero relevance, except to the fact that maybe as someone who is young, you might want more freedom. You might, that might be, if you were to think targeting wise, age demographics, someone who is going to want to escape and get freedom and travel and explore and have new experiences, they might be in the younger category. They might not be, but that is the only way that her demographics are relevant to her. The fact that she's a fish bears no significance to that emotion of wanting to escape and experience the world outside of whatever you're experiencing. And so I've kind of gone on this tangent there. We can all resonate with those messages. And now the point of what I was saying, which I'll circle back around to, is if I start telling a story with these details, I can't then tell, I have to relate the story I'm telling to with the solution that's necessary. Let's just say I start telling a story, obviously, about this fish woman. I can't then start giving her a solution to a different problem. I can't then just start saying, here's a nice necklace to make you feel better about yourself. I need to give her a tool that enables her to get out. So it's relating that the tangible product that she needs, working legs. It's such a weird, I can't believe I've gone down this tangent of all things, but the product that Ariel essentially needs in this example is working legs and an ability to walk on land, and that's the product we'd essentially sort of be selling her. We're not going to start selling a different a different thing to her, like more jewelry or whatever. So I can see some people laughing at me, and it's cool. The point of this is me saying, like, the story, the message does derive from the details of the tangible and the product because of the relevance that it draws together. I'm going to get off the Little Mermaid now, but the idea is that this is like a symbiotic sort of story and solution relationship, basically. And the underlying message, I think, of the Little Mermaid, just as a start, is go. Like, I think that's basically it. It's as simple as get out. At any cost as well, because she obviously does some crazy things. Now I thought, where does this also apply? Okay, this is really interesting. I'm now on Toy Story, so now we're going to really go on empathizing with the problems of toys. But I'm not going to go too far into that. I'm just going to say, I think it's a message about community. Toy Story, if I was to boil it down, it's a message about community. The problems they experience are relevant to toys, but also relevant to us as well. So we empathise with their problems, not their labels, and that is addressed through the story. And now let's talk about, I suppose, the underlying message of, let's just say, the SFM mentors that we want to deliver. I think it's live better. I think if for people who maybe aren't a part of this, the online community that I'm part of, we're promoting workshops which teach you how to build an online business from scratch, or the workshops actually teach you what's possible with an online business and an overview of the mechanics of how it could work and the positive implications those things could work on your life. And if I looked at that and just had to summarize what that message was, it'd be live better. That's the best I can come up with. And I think that's the truth of it. That's where the message boils down to. I don't, and most people on this call, if not all people on the actual Zoom call at least, are members of the community. And I'm interested to see, there's only a few people with the cameras on, but does that make sense? If I was just to say, like, just to boil it down to live better, I think that, like, that's like, yeah, that makes sense. But what's happening, and my whole, my job, I suppose, best way I could put it, my consulting, my coaching, my own community is at the moment focuses a lot on helping people write adverts for this, although I have clients outside of that. Where the ideas for these lectures came from, which I said is there's a lot of fluff going around and there's a lot of, like, there's not enough talking about what the product is. I also don't think there's enough of that message being shared. And I think that's the universal message of that product to create. And it's creating a lifestyle business, really, or an extra income stream online. It's not like, you know, I know some people in business who are actually obsessed by a mechanism that exists in the world, and they want to know how to, you know, they want to turn that into a much bigger vision. So where we're at, I think, within this realm is much more lifestyle businessy. We're not invested in the product so that because we think it's absolutely phenomenal, although I'll come to that as well. We're invested in the product because we believe that it can provide us a great lifestyle and other people a great lifestyle. So when we're promoting it, why is there not more relevance to live better? Live better. It's just such a simple idea. And I genuinely, I cannot for the life of me think of another. Maybe grow, learn. Learn doesn't quite, it's useful, but it's not. I think learn is the tool that enables you to live better in this particular example, where I'm saying, because essentially what we're promoting is education. It's the tangible thing that enables this person to live better. That's the relationship between what it is versus what it provides, the benefit and that sense feeling versus the structure. And The message, I mean, no, I don't think it's learn either. You learn to live better. I think in this particular example, this is just the construction of the message that I've got in my head. If you learn, you live better. There is a community element in there, but I don't think it's as strong as the learn, because the whole point of the affiliate program that I'm a part of is that you're promoting an education to help people get the skills they need in order to create an online business which provides them a life of freedom. So I don't think, again, I think the community is a benefit that's a bit disconnected. The main tangible element is the education. I'm also here not saying that I have all the answers. I have a thought process and I have experience. It doesn't mean I know all the answers. And I think what also has provided me some success in my career over the years is that I defy what people tell me, hence this launchable structure, because everyone's talking about message. And I'm like, I don't see that as super valuable. So I'm defying what people are telling me. So whatever I'm saying to you, if it doesn't make sense, I encourage you to defy me and come up against me. I'm going through this exploratory process myself because I think it's valuable for me as well to learn. I'm learning as I'm delivering. But when I'm thinking about it, I can't think of any other message. Like when I think of Toy Story, it's like the power of friendship. And when I think of Little Mermaid, it's get out and and live your adventure. And then when I think about the SFM, I think it's about living a better life. That's what I think it boils down to. So I think when we are delivering our message, that's what I see, at least. That is the main value I see in the promotions that I put together, is to live better. And so if you're going to prioritize messaging, you have to prioritize it from this perspective. What do you find? When you think about it, just logically, what's the thing you find? Where's the gold? And then you put it all together. Okay, so that's sort of like my take on that. I think the message for me, it seems clear that it's live better. But there's also some other things that I wanted to tackle in terms of the message, and that's I think what makes a message really strong is clarity, right? Obviously, that makes sense. But again, one of the things that I find is that I don't work super well off scripts. I work better off plans. And this is why I've kind of constructed these lectures as well, because I find that if I've got a plan, I'm way better at just talking about it and exploring the ideas and the concepts around it than I am at scripting it out and having slides. I'm never going to use slides ever again. I've sort of decided that's my decision now. I'm not going to use slides because they're just, hold on, why have I done that? Slides just kind of mess me up. So, but what I'm doing is I'm assessing what I'm saying at each step of the way, so that I'm interpreting whether or not what I'm saying is clear. And because I'm going through quite challenging topics and I guess abstract ideas, I want to make sure that they make as much sense as possible. And they don't make a huge amount of sense unless you sort of tease them apart and create connections between the tangible elements of it. So I've sort of like I've identified. I told you, the message is like the depth and stuff like that, and I gave you a picture of the cart and the tracks and all this stuff to sort of like help you understand what my perception of the message is. And that's what I think is really important. Is when you put forward a complicated idea, is that you explore and address all areas that could be fuzzy around that idea, so that the person receiving that information and that message has as much possible understanding on that particular topic that they can have, that you can give. Because I'm never ever going to be able to see inside the head of anyone else. I'm never going to be able to understand someone else's perspective or awareness over what I'm saying. So the best way for me to get my message across is to insist on covering all bases, which is why I find it hard as well with advertising specifically, how people like, you can't have very many points in an advert because a point is complex and it needs expanding on. I think there's only really 3 points. If I break it down in an advert, there's only 3 points. So I'm experimenting with getting rid of the intro and the conclusion, although not necessarily super successfully at this stage, but it's something I'm experimenting with. The 3 points is like, this will improve your life. This is the evidence. This is the way it will improve your life. And here's the evidence that it'll improve your life. You're only making 3 points. And that 1 point, each of those points, they need an expansion to fully put forwards the depth and value of that point. So for instance, if I'm making the point that building an online business will help you live a life of freedom, well, I have, like, that's 1 point which I will explore in a whole paragraph. And that's the only point that I'll be exploring in that whole paragraph before moving on to the point where here's the mechanics of how that happens. And I come at it on lots of different angles and I bolt those two together to create this one thread that goes through them. And the third point is about, here's the evidence. So it's the point, explanation, evidence, I think, I can't, whatever it is that you taught in school. So it's only 3 points we're making. And so that's why I find it very hard. Like, so many people go off on so many different tangents. And it's like, don't wonder why people don't get what you're saying when you make so many points. What I've said is in this particular lecture is a great example of the fact that I think one of the participants just nodded when I said that. They're like, I got that. It took me about 5 minutes of explaining what I was trying to get across to get resonance. And that's what we need to be paying attention to, is that just because you say something once doesn't mean that someone has interpreted it the way you want them to interpret it. And so you have to say something once and then explore all implications of that one thing that you've said. So you're only saying 1 point. And I like to think of it, it's like a helm, I suppose. There's a point, there's an eye of the helm, and then everything else around to it must always circle back to that point. And the whole advert itself will have a point, and each individual compartment will have a point, and each individual sentence will have a point. But what makes something work really well is when they all tie together. And I think the thing that ties everything together is the message. So the message, you can boil it down to a very, very, very small. Yeah, it's almost, and this is also something I say with like landing pages and thank you pages and everything like that. And also, by the way, I do believe that the best copy or the best adverts are the shortest ones, because it's skill. It's skill to get those. Let's say you've got 3 points that you're making with this overarching message. It's a lot of skill to get those 3 points across in very small amount of words. And if you're able to, it's like this very condensed, impactful, meaningful, tiny thing that is so absorbable really fast. And what you're trying to do is to get someone to absorb that message in as quick a way as possible, so that you can have the best best leverage on making a sale, let's just say, for marketing. I've kind of lost my thread with that, but the whole idea is that you want them to just understand the message and also tie it to what you're selling. And for me that requires an exploration of the different ways of looking at 1 point, so that that person can absorb that information as best as possible. So it's just about conveying meaning in the best way possible. And to start with, like I've sort of said, when we're creating adverts, I think the best way to do that is firstly authenticity, but also continuous explanation until you get the message across, right? It's like continually circle back to it and come at it from different ways until that person experiences it, until you get that person going, oh, that's what you mean. Don't let it, what happens is I talk about them as if they're closed and open loops. when you open up a thread, you open up an idea, you open up a point, if you don't close that thread, you move on, I think it creates a bit of like a gap in emotion. Like we don't actually enjoy not tying those threads together. And so what it does is then if someone's listening to your advert, it gives them a negative experience of listening to you. And it also suggests, well, for them, they just don't have a full understanding of what you're saying. And for them to be invested in what you're saying, they need to have a full understanding. So you want to close those threads. And to me, the way you close those threads, as I've said multiple times, which is an excellent example of me living by my philosophy, you have to just continuously beat at it until it comes out. And what I find as well as an extra point to this, which is why I don't do a lot of work on hooks and stuff like that. I find that when you get your point, let's just say it's live better, for example, that's your message. You want to live better, and maybe in the first one, it's like, your point is like, okay, if you learn the skills to create an income that's separate to your current income, you can live a better life. What will happen is where I'm beating at that one point and I'm addressing it at so many different angles, going, see, do you see how this makes sense? Like if you created an income that was separate to your own salary, you would live a better life because you would no longer have to do a job, and maybe you don't like that job. Or also, if you make it automated, you can spend more time doing what you want to do, so you don't have the job and you get to do what you want to do. And then you can also, you grow it, so your ability to expand, and you keep going back to that. But it's creating this income that's separate from your job so that you can live a better life. What I find is by going on these little exploratory paths, I'll say a line which is like, wow, that was really impactful and meaningful. Just that one line, and this one line maybe will encapsulate the whole idea. And then that's where copy comes from. That's when short, punchy copy comes from. It comes from going on this exploration, and then it will, something that you will say, and I think it comes out of the ether. I think it's the gold that you find. Something that you say will be the right thing. And so, yeah, I think it's such an elusive topic to talk about messaging. It's just because it's an impossible thing to teach. It's just something you have to go hunting for. And I think the best thing I can say, maybe it's like not necessarily dig deep, but it's like don't give up because it's a whole process. And if you stick at it, maybe you'll never hit the point that you're trying to hit, or you'll never find the goal that you want to find, but you'll be better off for it if you stick at it for as long as you physically can, until I don't know, you have to come up for air or something like that. But I think sticking with it, exploring it, staying consistent with it, and hold on to the point with both hands, so that you don't get like sort of swept away. And I think that's where the message comes from. Now, to summarize and put everything into sort of perspective, because that almost feels a bit dramatic actually, and I feel like I don't really want to leave it there. It's got to connect to the product, obviously. It's got to connect to the elements of the story. If you're a mermaid, you've got to talk about legs, unfortunately. If you're selling online business, you've got to talk about work, you've got to talk about all the things, and you've got to talk about the education as well. If you're selling a digital education, you've got to talk about how learning is beneficial and what exactly they will be learning. You've got to tie that gold. And I think this is a really, really important message to say, actually, because I'm someone who's always been very able to deliver a message, but not consistently and not well as well. It just because you've got a message doesn't mean you're useful. That analogy I said at the beginning, like, is the gold worth the gold without all the other infrastructure? And I don't think it is. And that's from personal experience, and now working with people that are much better at execution and packaging, not necessarily packaging things up, but helping me move the message across. It's amplified the value because now there's usefulness behind it. So don't rest heavily on the message, despite what everyone sort of says about how important it is. There's so many more important elements to getting a story out, and that's also very relevant to the mechanics. So the tracks, we've got YouTube as an advertising platform, Google Ads, So important. I'm now focusing a lot of my attention on split testing and the ads platform itself, and there's some interesting and significant results in that where I've not focused enough attention before, but had focused all my attention on the ad. There's also obviously the structure itself, which contains the message and helps it become tangible and less abstract. So you want to really focus on that as well. I have also outlined the problems of the script structure. I genuinely don't think there's such thing as a universal structure, although there seems to be some patterns. But anytime you try and outline those patterns, they completely don't make sense. I don't think there's any way of actually outlining what the pattern is. I think there's something fluid and inexplicable about that. And of course, the avatar. There's no point putting everything together unless you have someone to deliver it to, which will put use to everything as it works. So I think that's my lecture on message. I think, God, that was quite, I'm all right with that. So I've got 2 minutes. Well, I'm going to stick around for longer anyway, but have I got any questions or any comments or anything like that you'd like to share? This is where I need some elevator music. Don't be shy if you do have any questions. You can say something in the chat if you want to say something, but you're feeling a bit shy, or you just, because otherwise I'll be closing this down soon, and it is a good opportunity to ask anything. Plus, I do know bloody messaging is an absolute shambles. It's very difficult. Really tough subject to address. I hope I've done it some justice. All right. Oh, we got a... Oh, Chris, where the bloody hell are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, so Chris says, oh, I'm glad I got up for this. Awesome lecture as always. Thank you so much, Chris. Chris Shirala, everyone. John, hello.
Yeah, hello, lovely. I've just been eating my...
by the way, if you're trying to say something.
Yeah, I am. Audible. That's weird.
No.
Nothing. I'm not muted. Don't know what's going on.
Oh, all right. Well,
I don't know what's going on.
Oh! I've got the bloody mute on, haven't I? There we go. Try now.
Yeah. Hello, lovely. Yeah. I've just been. It's a weird time, this call for me. I've just had calls with a member, and then I've had to have my lunch. So I apologise for not having joining later,
right.
etc. But yeah, love it all, and I just want let the other guys on the call know that. We worked on that. I've got a few adverts running now. As per your instructions 10 days ago, I made 2 ads 2 weekends ago and got those running. And I'm working on another one at the moment, which will be up in a minute, which I've got high hopes for. But really, the members that I've got coming in are all coming in at the moment from the advert that you and I crafted between us, mostly you probably. But obviously there was some input from myself there in, to kind of kick off with.
Yes, you did.
And so it's just to let the other guys and girls here know that, this, Caroline is seriously, good at what she does, and, gets results. And that really is all that matters, isn't it? It's just the results, And these results, which on paper all look very lovely, they're turning into, relationships with people. And that's a beautiful thing. One of my members I had a call with a little while ago. He's just started advertising on Facebook. He's just getting his first leads coming in. It changes other people's lives as well as our own. It's bloody brilliant. I love it. I can't get enough of it. So yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you, Caroline, for being such a superstar.
Oh, that is like the nicest, unprompted. I actually promised that was unprompted. It sounded like I was being ironic. That is a really lovely testimonial. I really like, do you know what's really lovely about that as well? God, I'm going to start analysing it and talk about messaging now. This is so funny. He's like, just take the bloody compliment, Caroline. No, I must dissect it and tell everyone why the message was fabulous. There's I think one thing that we struggle with is, this is great actually, sort of to close things down. One thing that I felt like there's been a bit of resistance to and pushback to in terms of what I've been teaching specifically is because I've been talking very much about the cold elements of marketing and making sales, and saying you need to prioritize making sales, you need to prioritize talking about the product, and it's not about you have to separate yourself from almost your compassion in a way in order to prioritize sales. And it's a very tough message to say, because I don't really mean that in the long run. I mean that in terms of achieving something and progressing, you do have to be a little bit forthright and formidable, and it's not necessarily super useful to be compassionate when you're trying to be productive. And it's not that I want, and it's the same thing as well, I say, it's not that it's not important to have those elements and those humanistic attributes and to care about other people, it is, but I do believe it boils down to, once you fill your cup, you can start to experience the benefits of what that does to other people. But you can't start feeding people from an empty plate, you know. And so I think what John has just really, really nicely sort of pointed out is like, what we worked on was an advert that would, you know, convert very, very sort of straight down the, you know, is this going to make money? Is this going to convert and make sales? And that was what my priority was. And obviously what John has sort of said now is like, just because you make that as a target, it doesn't mean it doesn't have positive implications for the people that you connect with. And I think genuinely, and this is something I also really wanted to connect with, is that if you don't believe in your product, don't even bother advertising it. Because I had a conversation, I think last week, one guy said, I know this works, I know this whole thing works, and I know this whole thing works. And I thought to myself, that's the wrong perspective to look at from this, with what you're doing. I know it works because it's looking at it from the angle of like, I can make money with this. I know I can. I know the system works. It's like, it's the wrong perspective to go into an advert with that, because it's all about you. And when you look at, and I know most people here are crafting an advert for SFM and for the workshops, but when you go at it with the angle of like, Jesus Christ, this can change the world, and learn the product, really learn the product and what the actual positive implications of people getting involved are. Because if you can then convey that it's almost undeniable value. So for me, and I think this is, you know, why I'm getting pretty decent success with not very much money being spent, is that I see the getting started modules more so rather than the workshops. I see them as revolutionary. I see them revolutionizing the average person's life, and that really sits well with me. I'm like, this really empowers the normal person with tools that have never been available before. And the long-term implications of that is total economic transformation, because it's giving the individual person as much technology as put a bloody moon on a rocket on the moon. It's giving people the technology to earn an income on their own terms without an employer in a way that's scalable, and like, it's just giving everyone this. If everyone learns these skills, it's a revolution in the way you earn money. And when you put it like that, and you think about what bloody good value that is for someone's life, and for $100 to start out with, you're like, Jesus, yeah, that is insane value, and the long-term implications are phenomenal. And that's the perspective I'm coming from when I'm creating, is that you need to know what this is. If you don't, then you're living in the dark ages, and your ability to live better is completely stifled. And so, yeah, anyway, that was kind of like a bit of a segue from John's comment, which is, you know, that he's created these connections with people, it's relationships. It's now someone else is taking this and putting this into actual, you know, action, and is creating results for themselves, has created an opportunity for themselves. So there are some really significant long-term implications of getting this right, not just for you, but for everyone else. But you do have to prioritize. You have to prioritize sales and metrics to start with, guys. And as long as no, that's not sexy or humanitarian or, you know, bloody socialist or whatever it is, but you do have to do that. And so anyway, just kind of, I think this is a great example as well, but I'm not going to do any more analysis of the difference, the balance between structure and chaos. Like, you've got to structure it and also be a bit fruity. So I guess I'm gonna close this off now, because as you can tell, I can go on tangents forever. So imagine how difficult it is for me to create an advert. And if I can condense my ideas into one neat package, then you bloody well can as well. Find the message that is small and meaningful, and then figure out what you're selling. Connect them two together. Make 3 points about why is this great? Show me how it's great, and then evidence for that point. And that's what the relatable, tangible, and legitimate section is. And why I bolt the introduction and the conclusion on is to introduce the idea and to close it all up for their own. They have their own sort of functional purposes, but the 3 points that you really need to focus, centralize your arguments around. Dig deep, make it tangible, and get some results. Go put together some adverts, you crazy people. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm not going to answer any more questions, because otherwise I will go on like a 20-minute rampage, and I've got to leave you guys wanting something for next week. No idea what I'm going to talk about next week, but you'll all get an email or a notification when it's on. So I hope to see you all next week. All right, this was lovely. Did I miss anyone when I had my camera on, my thing on mute by any chance? Did anyone speak out except John? Okay, good. Right, I will see you guys next Tuesday. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.